approval of our previous minutes. If everyone's had a chance to look those over, do we have any corrections that need to be made at this time? Has everybody approved those minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Gene moves, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Jerry seconds, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, the motion carries. Our next part is to discuss the annual report and strategic planning from the Asheville Police Department and city staff updates. You're going to talk about that, all right?
So, I know, I said I'm loving it. So, my name is Jamie Matthews, and I am the assistant to the city manager. But I'm currently serving in an interim position at the police department, helping with some administrative support and planning in the department. So I wanted to take a little time tonight to talk to you guys about some opportunities for strategic planning and setting some priorities coming into the council's budget cycle, which is starting and will really start to ramp up in the beginning of next year. So I shared with you guys in your packet this strategic planning cycle that the city uses, and I think that Sarah Terwilliger, the deputy clerk, has shared this with you guys. But I just wanted, if you focus in on this, there's a lot of information in here. If you focus in on this green section, it's sort of the cycle for boards and commissions. And then if you look at the months through August, December, and January is when typically boards and commissions will start doing their planning and strategic priorities for the upcoming year. And a lot of them do that in very different ways. Most of them hold a strategic planning session or a day or retreat, and there's a lot of different options in how to do that. A lot of groups will use outside facilitators to come in and help. And I think with so many new members that you guys have and coming into this cycle, it could be an opportunity to do that in however way you guys want to. Whether it's a separate day, half day, full day, however. But you guys can talk about that. No decisions need to be made tonight around this. Other boards and commissions have put together a subcommittee that gets together and sort of could bring recommendations back to the group for y'all to discuss. But I think it's a good opportunity to do that at this stage when y'all are talking about wanting to do some of those community meetings out in different locations and how those could look, and get together and start planning that, and so that y'all can figure out how you want to do it. So that's just what I wanted to talk about. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or y'all can just discuss and figure that out. Thank you.
Jake, I'm gonna go with that.
Oh, right, yes. So also in your packet, thank you, Julia, I have provided examples of an agenda and strategic planning and annual report from the Recreation Board, just for y'all to look at and see. And there's many other examples that are available on the website, on the Boards and Commissions page, from a lot of different ones. So that's just for you guys to use as a reference if you decide to move forward with that.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, our next thing is unfinished business from last meeting. Do an update on the search for the housing resident board member. Jan, was that under yours?
I mean, I talked to their acting president, they were part of it, so.
Okay. Nobody's stepped forward yet? Something else?
I'm not sure going to the resident council is the only conduit, I think the staff's
Right.
just a resident, they be interested, put on a flyer.
Yeah, I agree.
Put
Yeah, I think that would be good. And maybe that's something we can talk about, either forming, either putting one or two people on that tonight to, increase the search and look for new ways to find someone.
I have some extra flyers for that over here too, so if anybody wants to take it and post them, or I can send you some more copies.
Thank you.
Our next piece is to vote on the CPAC rules and procedures. Has everyone had time to look those over from last meeting? We had the ones that I put together. We have the draft from some of the other boards that they use, and then there's always the option of Robert's Rules of Order. Would anyone like to have a discussion on that at this time? About if they have a new one they would like to submit, if there's questions or concerns about the ones that we have in as an example.
I was in favor of using the ones that you proposed, just because you've had more experience with this board and you're familiar with kind of the guidelines that we've been set to follow over the time, at least the time that I've been on the board.
Yeah, I know on mine, there's a couple pieces on mine. If everyone looks on the first page of the proposed rules that I submitted, there's in Article 1 membership, Item 2, there's a piece there for a youth representative. That is language I took directly from the city council when they were reviewing the Citizen Police Advisory Board. And I think that's something that we're gonna need the city council to weigh in on, to see if it's something that they are tied to, or if it's something that we need to actively search for. There wasn't a lot of clarity there from the council, if that was under us to go and look for that person or not. So, that's why that is in there. That's directly pulling the language. Article 2, I was gonna make a change to, Section 1 where it says reading the minutes to just approving the minutes. So nothing there, just a very minor update. And, Section 2.02 with the schedule, saying if there's no quorum after 20 minutes. I just did that because I know in the past we've had some problems sometimes, either because of traffic or parking. So I put that in just to give us the leeway. Again, if anyone feels very strongly about that, we can change that time down or up. I don't know if everybody feels okay with that right now. We can leave it. Okay.
Can I just mention something? Not that
course.
I'm voting, but oftentimes, well, not often, periodically, there will be, before a meeting, you know you're not going to have a quorum. I would also put a caveat in there as to council, because we've been through some of those where you come and it's not really a meeting.
Yeah.
You don't have a quorum, so I would just put that bug in your ear.
Yeah, that's actually in there.
Is it?
In Section, yeah, it's in there. If there's no quorum after 20 minutes, be left to the discretion of the chair to waive reason on how we cancel the meeting.
No, but I mean,
Um,
like, yesterday, if you would've known you're not gonna have a quorum, you cancel it before even coming to the meeting.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
So the way I read it, this is reading that you show up and then wait 20 minutes.
Right.
But just food for thought.
Yeah.
Because I know it
that's-
is a public posted, and the timing is critical, but
Yeah.
if feasible, I would just put that in there for thought.
Yeah, I know, I know what you're saying, and it can be kind of hard because we don't check in before every meeting, so I don't know how we would ever know that sometimes. You know, it's not like everybody says, oh, hey, I'm gonna definitely be there tomorrow. It's kind of been one of those things.
Yeah, I would say historically, when they do the minutes, or excuse me, the agenda,
Yeah.
that's when they do a check-in, and there will be
Yeah,
4 or 5 say they're not coming, and that would be the time that I would think would be
yeah.
logical, but yeah, it is very fluid.
Right, yeah, it is, and we did that. Julie actually emailed asking if there was anybody not gonna show to respond, and I didn't hear back from anyone. Did you hear back from anyone?
Just Carl.
Just Carl, yeah, so, yeah, if that cover comes up, we could definitely cancel it and be within the legalities of public postings. I think we would be fine, so.
I'll let you guys know if everybody emails me that they can't make it for some reason, I'll let everybody else know.
Right, yeah, we would definitely, because we could do it within 24 hours pretty easily, so I don't think that's a problem. Okay, well, I'm gonna make those changes, so at this time, I ask if everybody would like to vote on my rules with those changes, which I would obviously change and submit.
Allison, I have a question, in Article 5, subpart 4,
Yes.
says, I think that's unnecessary. You know, we have the audience input at the end of every meeting, and I think that that's sufficient. I don't think we need to get too formal here with people submitting the request 2 weeks in advance.
It's not for individuals, it's for groups or, an organization coming forward that wants to do an official presentation during the meeting.
Okay.
The public comment at the end addresses that, where anyone obviously is always welcome to come speak up. But that is only in there for any group or person or groups of people who want to do a public presentation.
Okay.
Those to be on the agenda for it.
Yeah, to get on the agenda to do an official presentation, that's why that's there.
Okay.
Does that help? Okay. All right. Any other questions about that? So at this time, I'd like to ask if we would like to, someone would submit to incorporate my articles for us with the changes that we outlined there. Can I get a motion?
Motion to vote on incorporating these articles for bylaws.
Can I get a second?
So I'll do a second.
All in favor of approving the bylaws, the rules of order that I wrote up, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alright, it's passed. And I just want to remind everybody, these are not set in stone. We can change these at any time. That brings us to section C, which is shared goals and priorities for CPAC. Julie, was that,
I think we mentioned before we vote on it, chair, we wanted to hear people's input on their goals for it, so especially if you wanted to run for chair.
okay, that's what I want to clarify, if that was tied to D also for the voting. on
That was my
it.
understanding.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had a little question on that, so that is for the chair position. So at this time, would anybody like to step forward goals or priorities that you have, that you would like to put forward for CPAC, whether you want to run for the chair or not? I'm gonna give everybody a chance. I have
I
some.
came up with goals, don't necessarily feel super strongly one way or the other about chair or vice chair, to be transparent, but mainly just wanted to take the time to think through goals. Do you want me to share?
Yes, please.
Okay. I came up with just 3 sort of main goals. The first one being to really have a space for just checking in and transparency with the police department around like some of the policy recommendations and changes that are being made. I think in general, sometimes it can be a tendency to check the box of, okay, we've done that, let's move on, but having a space to really check in about content and checking in about the way those policies are being implemented to continue to have a continuous conversation for transparency's sake, and also discuss like all other practical policies that could be implemented to help address big picture issues. So related to violence, in particular gun violence, but also sexual and domestic violence, and policies that can help support survivors, and just policies in general to help promote safety and wellness in the community, and really looking at that kind of on a nuts and bolts level. The second goal would really to be to create an engagement plan with APD. I know we kind of talked about that, but the sense that I got was maybe that was some steps that APD is already taking or things they're already doing, but really finding a space to get more community feedback and to be more directly in communication with the community, whether that means meeting in other spaces occasionally, or doing some sort of like outreach as APD or as CPAC to help develop direct communication and more direct feedback from different areas of the community and get different perspectives and kind of create a plan to really more directly have a conversation with the community. And along with that, potentially, like I know the 21 CP consultation and that whole process was really focused around policies and what APD could do internally, but it sounds like community feedback was also centered around the community piece of that being missing. So along with direct, really detailed conversations, also maybe suggesting to City Council to have a quantitative like survey type study done with the general community to get that missing community piece, both from interviews and from maybe more quantitative data to have a better understanding of that piece that it felt like maybe was missing. And then the third goal is to improve trust and build relationship with the police department, specifically with some populations that in my work I often hear express mistrust about law enforcement in general, and that would be people experiencing homelessness and housing authority residents, and really working to specifically build trust in those communities and developing community policing strategies for those communities in partnership with APD. Sorry, that was kind of wordy.
No, that was wonderful, wonderful, thank you, Jane. I think all those are great. I've heard a lot of people voice those. Thank you. I'll wait a minute to share mine. I don't want to dominate that. So, does anybody else have?
Yeah, I can jump in. You know, I think the two main things for me being on a board like this is in the action and accountability. You know, it's great to have these meetings once a month, but we really want to do more than be here once a month doing things. So I think it's really important to have kind of action and accountability. So action really just has, you know, direct and indirect action in the community. So I think, you know, bouncing off what you said is we have subcommittees, 2 to 3 people who kind of focus on these small issues. I was, you know, brainstorming, you know, having a committee who focus on community outreach, talking to people, doing service to people, what they believe, and then an activities committee, you know, 2 people who work on planning those events, talking to the community, and setting that up, and also an activity committee. You know, I signed up for the ride along program. You know, it's people who are going to do the Citizens Police Academy. There are 2 people who do that, and then we can all come together and kind of bring that back to the board. So, and that's an accountability situation too. Instead of all of us doing one thing, we have, you know, 2 or 3 people who are accountable. You're doing 2 or 3 things, and you have to bring it to the board to get it done. So that's kind of what I see as the board to really, you know, bring action to the community.
I think these are great. Again, these are things we've heard in the past, and thank you for
Yeah.
voicing that. Does anyone else have anything they want to share about goals they'd like to see the committee take in the future?
I think it's very important that we try to get out to the community at least 4 times a year and keep it open. I say at least because if there are special situations that arise that can call for us to get out to the community. I noticed we used to get quite a few people showing up at these sessions, and we haven't had that lately. And I don't know what the reason is, but I think maybe we need to reach out rather than having them come to us.
I agree.
I think our overall goal should be accountability. No matter what, we've always asked for information and it's not come back. It's not come back in a reasonable time, or when it has come back, it's not complete.
culture has to change. We are going out to the community, we can discuss that issue,
We can
maybe come up
discuss.
with some recommendations.
We can, but that's something that has to happen in-house.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason, like,
We
when
have
we
a
get
responsibility to do
when we
that
get
too.
the update from Dave, no, we don't. When we get the update from Wade about the peer accountability meeting y'all had after we had our September, you said that you had one the following day as far as how y'all were gonna handle the peer accountability within the police department as far as one officer misbehaving on call. How was that being handled? So that's the culture that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Until that's taken care of, like, the community isn't going to be comfortable coming forward.
And culture change, I believe culture change happens from within. Outside people can't change your culture, that you'll run into resistance. Culture always has to happen.
And the resistance is when we have a room full of people after an incident.
Does anybody have anything else? I have a couple things, and a lot of y'all touched on those already, with the actions and, getting out in the community, forming subcommittees. But I took a little different approach to this. When we talked about this last meeting, I sat back and thought, about what I thought about this committee, what I thought about it would feel like to join this committee and how it would operate. And I've been really disappointed in this committee over the last, year and a half, I think like 14 months that I've been on it. I think it's a missed opportunity, but I think it's something that we can correct, and I think we've got people in place that believe that we can correct it. I think I'm really excited about this board. So I'm not gonna talk about the action subcommittees because this has already been talked about, but I will talk about what I saw as a mission for this board. And to me, it goes back to our mission statement, and that's to serve as a liaison between the police and community over concerns. And as Shauna touched on, that's always been reactionary. Something happens, people show up, they voice that. So I've been investigating, I like to read, I don't sleep a lot, so, and I found some really interesting approaches to this. And I know there's been questions around legality of boards and commissions in Asheville and in North Carolina. But the great thing is we've got a lot of examples to pull from other cities, and I don't think that other cities are doing things illegal. It would only be like maybe one. So something I would like to see as a vision, if people support that, is to make this a true board where people can come to and submit a case for an appeal for how they've been treated with the police department. This is done in Durham, it's done in Charlotte, and it's done in other cities. There's a great framework already in place that we can involve. We can get a subcommittee together, we can go and talk to these other cities, see how they do it. Like I said, I've already done a lot of research on it. It's completely legal. It would take some changes to the board. We would have to have some confidentiality agreements signed that the city attorney could put together, the city staff could put together. Parts of the meetings, because of confidentiality, would be held out of public view, just like they are. We would not be viewing body cam footage because that's not legal. But we could serve as that liaison between people, a person or people, and the police and how they were treated. And we would have to do that part out of public view because of confidentiality. And basically, I've made some outlines here of what that means, like what power would the board have in that situation. And the board would have no power to discipline, reprimand, or fire any officer or employee. That's out of our scope. We all know that from city laws or state laws. Our only power would be to make recommendations to the chief of police, the city manager, and the city council. And we would review these cases, people would submit their case to be heard, and we would, as a committee, decide on how to do that. And most cities do that quarterly, and I think it's a good approach because, especially if it was something we wanted to start, because it gives us time to ramp into it, and I would hope we wouldn't, I hope our city's in better shape than that we wouldn't have so many that we would have to do it more than quarterly. It's something we would do quarterly, but it's one of those things we would have to take stock of and see where it's at. Most cities do that on a quarterly basis though. And again, we would decide which cases to hear. And when we do that, the police would be involved. They would submit a report of how the incident occurred. And then the person submitting the complaint would also be there to submit how they felt they were mistreated, how it violated police policies or any other city policies that may be involved. And we would be that liaison that our mission statement says we should be. I've heard people come and say, you know, this is a committee of no action. This is a committee where nothing happens, where I can't be heard. That would put people in a group that they could do that in reference with the police and in reference to what actually happened to them. And we could sit here and be that true liaison that we're supposed to be according to our mission statement. Because right now it says we're supposed to mediate problems and conflicts. I've never seen that happen in 14 months, not one time. How can we mediate a problem or conflict if we don't have a way for people to come to us? So that's something I would like to see this committee become, a true mediator with problems and conflicts.
You said 3 things. What are they again?
What's that?
You said 3 things.
With,
Police, city council, was there a third?
oh, the city manager, the chief of police, and the city council.
So it's the city manager, chief of police, are they synonymous or are there 2 different meetings?
No, were you talking about who we would report our,
Right.
yeah, no, that would be, who we would write up our report and submit that to would be those 3 entities.
City manager.
City manager, the police, chief of police, and the city council. And the reason most cities choose those from my research is pretty much for the same reason we would, because the chief of police reports to the city manager reports to the city council. So like I said, these things are happening already in cities across North Carolina.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I'm totally for that idea.
And I mean, it'd take a lot of work. You know, we'd have to dig in. Some people, we'd probably have to, you know, a couple of us go down to Durham and talk with them, find out what's going on, you know, see as much of it as we can see publicly and talk to people behind the scenes on how to get it started, the problems they had getting it started. But I've got confidence in this. I think we can do this. And I think it would go a long way for people coming here and saying, I'm not heard.
I really like the idea. It sounds like a really great restorative justice model. What I'm curious about is, in your research, the processes that people use to select cases that would be heard, like what criteria would be used, or like how you go about that sort of first step, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is nuts and bolts to figure out in the process. But
Yeah.
just curious about that in the research.
Yeah, I won't go too in the weeds with that, but it's usually like you would expect. You know, you fill out a form and submit it and the forms be submitted to us, not to the police, not to the city manager or anyone else. It's submitted directly to the board, and then the board reviews those, and then they notify the person the results, because I like follow-up. I like to do the circle, and that would be follow-up that the person's that it was not selected or it was selected.
Great.
And then scheduling time for them to come in. That's one piece of it. And I also think, you know, and there's a lot on us too. I don't want this to be, you know, we would have to do a lot. I think it would be required of us, one, to sign confidentiality agreements, because you'd have to do law. I think we should also undergo constant training. If you're gonna be on this board and hear cases like this, then we need to sit in with the city, with the city attorney. We need to sit in with the police. We should all go through the citizens police board. We should do probably 4 hours or so of ride-alongs. I mean, it should take a real commitment from us to hear these cases, to you know, educate ourselves on policing in Asheville, on the laws, and also some training on how to mediate. You know, the city can get us a mediator training that can be part of the retreat, and we can learn mediation skills. We can learn case skills on how to handle people who have undergone different types of assaults. Because when you have someone come in who is involved in charge of police brutality or sexual assault, you have to handle those things very differently. So it would require training for us that the city can set up and provide just like the other cities do. I mean, there's a big framework. I don't wanna, I could be here all night talking about this because there's a lot. It's really interesting. It gets me excited, to read this stuff and see other cities doing it, so.
Thank you, because our opposition that we have always faced is, we can't do that here.
Yeah.
But I love the way that you frame that other cities are doing it, and I'm sure that they would be breaking the law.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I thought. So that's my idea on the vision of this board going forward.
Allison, Jerry, could you summarize your points and get them to Julie so she can put them in the minutes? Because we discussed a lot here,
Yeah,
and,
I think that's, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea, Cliff.
I think I caught most of it, but if you wanna get it in writing, I can make sure it's exactly how you wanted it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll bounce that back and forth and get it pointed out. Does anyone have any question or anything they would like to submit for goals or recommendations, what the committee would look like in the future? So at this time, I guess, we're gonna vote on a chair or a vice chair. The terms, it also says they're including the terms. The terms, I had were for 1 year, for a chair and a vice chair. Seems to be pretty standard on most boards, unless someone feels real strongly about it. I think we should move that item at this time, submitting whoever would like to run for the chair. I want to submit myself for the chair. Does anyone else like to run for the chair?
I second you, Mr. Chair.
I think that you
I mean, your idea is really, yeah, I'm totally for that, Allison.
So, no one wants to run for the chair but me. Okay, well, I'll call for a vote, for the chair for Allison. All in favor of Allison becoming the chair? All opposed? None. Looks like now I gotta read and talk to the city even more about how we're gonna get all this set up, right?
Shannon, are you still eligible?
Shauna?
Are you still?
That's
No,
for vice chair.
I'd be interested in staying on as vice chair.
I'll make a motion.
I second that motion. All in favor of Shauna being the vice chair, say aye. All opposed? It carries.
Was it Jean and then Allison? What order was that? Jean and Allison?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, new business. Next meeting, date, time, and location. I think we've got a lot to do meeting for our next meeting. I'm personally gonna start thinking about subcommittees and how we can go about setting this up. And what I'm gonna do for the committee is I will send everyone a framework of things that we should do as kind of first steps. And we can look at that next meeting and see if we agree on that or need to change it, and then hopefully form subcommittees and start the rollout for this kind of process. So that's one thing I'm going to put on the next meeting item, next agenda item for next month would be, subcommittees for us. Do we want to meet in this location? Is this fine for everyone?
It's fine for me.
I propose that we stay here throughout the end of the year, just because we have 2 months with holidays.
Yeah,
And
Just simple, keep it here.
Yeah, that's a good
It's been
point.
simple the rest of the year.
yeah, and we
That's fine.
start off next year on a fresh foot. I like that. Okay. All right, so next month, same day, same time is good, 5 o'clock, we're good. We've got the room, right, Julie?
Mhm.
Okay.
November 7th.
So we're looking at November 7th, right?
So do you want to talk about now, since we'll stay here the rest of the year, are we gonna do north, south, east, west, and central next year for, off-site meetings? As
Yeah.
far as community centers or in the community?
Yeah, I think, Blake and Cliff and Jerry, I think everyone's kind of touched on that. Maybe, does everyone feel comfortable thinking about that, or would you just like to go ahead and say that now, like doing north, south, east, west, central, meetings for the public, or do we want to put some thought into it? Have subcommittees, saying this is the meetings we wanna do, and this is why, which route would you
Yeah, I
recommend?
like to try to start following everything through the subcommittees, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, get the ball rolling with that, and then we can just
Yeah.
get it through that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I do too, so we need a subcommittee for meetings. Okay. That'll be on the next agenda item, next month. All right, so we've got those things. Okay, well, that brings us to our committee member regional concerns. I'm just gonna go down the list here. Jerry? Regional concerns?
I think the main concern that I'm hearing recently is just like fear and concern about gun violence, particularly with the incident that happened over on Bartlett Street, and just people in the French Broad neighborhood being particularly concerned. Just hearing that a lot. I've reached out to some other folks, but didn't hear back with any other concerns. I did have a question. I don't really know if it's the time for it, but I read in the news something about APD creating a new district for more coverage. I thought I read on WLOS something along those lines, so I just wanted to ask that question.
Yeah, that's actually what was approved in 2017
Yeah.
for the fiscal year. It was just forecasting out the ideal, that's where the additional 15 bodies were authorized to be added to the agency. Realistically, the target date was July of 18 July of 19 to implement the districts. I don't know if we're gonna have staffing to do that at that point in time, then within the agency, but that's been in the works for a couple of years, and so within the next month or so, we'll start looking with our crime analyst, we're looking at the geography as well as the calls for service across the city to restructure the districts.
Okay.
Plan for that. So we're still at least 8 months to
So no
12
changes
months
right
away.
now?
Yeah, nothing immediate. But
Okay.
essentially, that's the goal for that was replacing the downtown unit, which is not a 24/7 operation, and just having a full functioning, roughly 24/7 operation in 4 districts versus 3.
That was actually a budget item.
Yes.
To fund it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay. That helps clarify. Thank you. I didn't understand what that article talked about when I read it.
Shauna?
I haven't had any concerns brought to me lately. I did reach out to a few residents that were outspoken that I knew of, and the biggest concern was actually there was interest, but there wasn't a stipend attached to it.
I have some information on that too. That's so funny. In my research, most committees, when they are on something like this, because of the time and investment, they are paid a stipend.
That's what was brought up.
So,
That's exactly what was said.
and I mean, it's not huge, you're on your rich off of it, but yeah, at most cities, it looks like it varies from $25 to $50, stipend for your meeting time. So
And it was just the thing about gas,
Yeah,
transportation.
yeah, that's right.
Maybe taking time off work a half an hour early, and that's what was brought up was, our time is also important. We're taking time away from our family or off our job, but, we should be compensated for it as well.
yeah, I totally agree with that. That's gonna be, that's also gonna be part of this framework going forward is stipend systems. So I'm glad you brought that up, 'cause
I
I
didn't
forgot.
catch what you first said, sorry.
I talked to a couple of housing residents that I knew that were very vocal in the community, and the biggest concern was, we were talking about CPAC and the fact that there was a vacancy for a housing, resident, and the biggest concern was that there was no stipend attached to it.
Oh, second, okay.
Anything else? I'm next on the list, so I don't really have any concerns, but I did just wanna clarify that framework for hearings. The public part of the hearings would still be public, and the non-public part would only be the actual mediation between people filing a complaint in the police department. But the rest of it would still be a public hearing, public comment, and everything else. I don't have any concerns this month on, policing or anything Gene?
I was thinking that maybe the ideas that you have, that you talk to Keith, he's not here, and see if council would be receptive. I don't want us to spend our time trying to implement a program, or you spend your time trying to get us to work off in subcommittees and go forward with it. But if the council is objectionable to that, I think they have the ultimate control from what I'm reading as to what we can implement, right?
Yeah, they do. They would have to vote on some of this. They would also have to put a framework in place for confidentiality agreements, the trainings, and everything. Yeah, and I didn't want to assume just because we vote on it, it's gonna happen.
No, I wasn't suggesting
Yeah,
that,
so
but I
I
think
appreciate that.
that we,
Yeah,
if we outline the things we've agreed upon today
right.
and submit those in the draft form to just see if those things are gonna be acceptable.
I agree.
The other thing that just finished doing all the analysis on the crime in the city of Asheville, unfortunately, because of my job, it appears that people think that most of the crimes are committed in public housing. There's absolutely no truth to that. But an example was the Orr Street incident happened on Orr Street in a neighborhood. And when WOS presented that, they presented Bartlett Arms, and it wasn't in Bartlett Arms. And then we moved to, well, it was on Bartlett Street, and it wasn't on Bartlett Street either. So I just think that, we need to talk to WOS and the newspaper votes, and so that we don't criminalize a whole race of people. You can't build relationships if you continue to make it appear that there's only one race of people committing crimes. Because if we look at crimes in the United States, the vast majority of the murders have been committed by white males. And I just think we need to work to get those things from a city perspective, so that we don't end up dividing ourselves because of the criminalization of one group of people.
I agree.
I just think we have to do that.
I think that sounds like a great piece for our subcommittee on community outreach. So, yeah. Thank you, Gene. Blake?
No concerns at all.
No. Cliff?
No concerns at this time.
And Michael and Carl are not here. Okay. Well, this time we'll move to public comment. Julie, do we have a list of public comment, or is it just jump up and grab the podium? Michael Beach. Whatever you feel most comfortable with, Michael. You have long-standing to be able to sit.
I have long sitting.
You have long-standing privilege. You've shown up enough now where you can sit.
I just had a couple of thoughts in listening to this today. The first thing is I really am concerned about this increase in violence and violent acts in the city. And I think that that's something that is certainly not new, but is starting to feel a bit like we never seem to be able to get a handle on cause as opposed to event. And I think maybe focusing a little bit more on causality as opposed to the actual events, if there's a way to do that. I don't know if it's through Gene's crime statistics or what, but I think it's an important thing to look at, to do some diversion before it gets into that point of violence. The other thing I would recommend is that you consider opening some of the subcommittees to community members as well, so that you can have a little more broad input into those subcommittees than just the folks on this board.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
And I highly recommend that as you begin to pursue the idea of kind of a review board, that you absolutely do a full course of mediation training before you begin to get involved in that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
And that's it for me.
That's one of the biggest things in my research that's critical, and I completely agree with that. Well, Michael was the only one that signed up. Would anyone else like to make a public comment?
I apologize for not signing up, Madam Chair. If you please, the chair. Get recognized.
It always
board is more receptive to some of what's come forward than the prior boards, which I think is terrific. I also take note of Jean's observation, because what you identified are boards and committees where there's been some enabling legislation that has allowed those powers to be in place. So I support strongly the suggestions, but think getting some read. The city council suggested went forward to Raleigh to ask about creating some form of review board and could not get, and help me out, Wade, if I'm off base on this, could not get any legislator to support a bill that would have given Asheville the authorities that we're talking about. But it doesn't seem to me that there still are opportunities for this board to be an intermediary, for this board, even if the legal constraints exist, and there may not be a workaround in the short term, why not still establish board members as a receiving mechanism for community complaints? I don't think there would be, I think it would be easy to overcome if there were legal objections posed by the city attorney's office. Do we have a city attorney now, by the way?
There's one left.
We,
I hope it's not.
We have an-
we have an interim city attorney.
So, I'm sorry?
There's an interim city attorney.
And that, who's that with?
Sabrina Rockwell.
There you go. Yeah.
So my point is, as you do this exploring and get some read early on, that do not completely back away from the idea of being a repository for complaints. In looking at quarterly meetings, again, that was something that the board had done for the last 2 or 3 years. I'm going to ignore public housing community when you're just doing this northeast, southwest, central, and working with G and ways to make sure that that's an included set of communities. And the only other thing when you mentioned stipends, I think there's an opportunity to connect with other boards who really have some of the same issues, and to look at whether there can be a collective set of recommendations to city council about matters like how to increase access, how to increase accountability. This is not the only group that is facing some of those challenges, and the case might be a stronger one if recommendations come from more than one city council appointed body. Thank you.
And I can address that part. The powers that Asheville City went to ask for Raleigh, those were direct reviews on it's actually similar to the sheriff's citizens review board, where they actually can view body cam footage, they can do a lot of things. The boards that are operating in Durham, Charlotte, and a few other towns, they get around that by not doing anything that takes General Assembly legislation. All of their abilities came from the city council saying, yes, this is needed, because it all fit within the scope of the law. They're not doing anything that took special authority given to them by the
And
General
I just
Assembly.
think that may require,
Yeah.
the Charlotte body is part of their Human Relations Commission. It's not a separate body, that exists in isolation. So, the exploration around the legal issues, and I'm simply saying, should the legal issues pose some
Right.
real barriers,
Yeah.
that it doesn't mean totally backing away
Yeah.
from still serving as a conduit, and have the opportunity
I
to
agree.
review and interact with Republicans,
Yeah.
more actively solicit some community institutions,
Yeah.
which we don't really use.
No, that's good. Yeah, Charlotte's is the only one that actually goes to the HRC. Other cities like Durham, they all are separate because of the confidentiality, because it's policing and policing communities is such a big subject. A lot of HRCs don't even want it under
And this one here may not as well.
Yeah.
In a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
But again, it's
Right.
complicated.
Yeah, it's gonna take a lot, it's gonna take a lot of going back and forth with the
But
city,
Jim's
city
point to
council.
figure out earlier on whether or not that's a route that's likely to be fruitful is probably why. We elders, we look at things like that.
Well, that's why we appreciate you.
Thank you.
No,
That's
I
what
think
it's
there has to be a real conversation about having two HRCs. I'm just not sure there's any valid reason for that, other than territorial.
What do you mean two, there's only one HRC, the HRC doesn't deal with policing.
No, but the county,
Oh, you mean the city and county?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point too, I wondered about that. That's-
but people have got to have somewhere to go.
Right.
And the confusion are of where to go, is a factor.
That's good.
And I'm not sure that if we divide the city and the county based on people's concerns or disservice or whatever it may be, it's helping us, because then if we don't have the same criteria, does that mean if you live in the county, if you get smacked once, that's not a violation of the city? I just think somebody's got to address that.
Well, that's out of our scope.
Well, but we're gonna end up having to deal with that because somebody, that's gonna be a case.
Yeah, no, we will.
Okay, just a point.
Would any other member of the public like to make a comment tonight? No. Future agenda items. I had, subcommittees for a planning session. I also had subcommittees for meeting location and community outreach. And we can deal with those as we pass the agenda items back and forth about, what those things should include. That was the agenda items I had on my list. Did anybody else have anything I did not have?
Should we have a committee, subcommittee, or start, drafting, like you said, like a proposal for the city council, like what the, review board will entail, all that kind of stuff, so we can have something kind of tangible for the next meeting to discuss, and maybe we can
Yeah.
finalize that, present it to the city council, so we can have it before the new year. It'd be nice to have kind of feedback on it before, like, so we invest all the time, and then we get, roadblocked, so I think that might be good to focus on too.
Yeah, I do too. Actually, maybe we should go ahead and do that, at this time, so we can have it ready for the next agenda. If somebody would like to, any number of people would like to help draft that, I would greatly appreciate that. Would anybody like to volunteer?
Yeah, I'll be there on that, thanks.
Anyone else?
So, where do you pass?
I can work with Alice on that too, because you bring up the research. I think we're gonna be drafting a proposal for city council as far as a police review board, citizen complaints, and kind of phrase it like that, just all the requirements.
Yeah. Try to get a little something ahead for our next agenda
I think
item.
it's great.
Okay, so that's the,
And that you have time to do it before we meet again, people get
Yes,
to
that's
us,
numbers,
and maybe
absolutely.
we respond, and then
Any comments?
when we get here, we can only discuss the differences rather than just going through all the time.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, absolutely.
So since we can't respond in mass, you want everybody just to respond directly just to, Blake and Allison then?
Right.
Yeah,
That-
that's good.
Right.
yeah, and that's again to keep the open meeting laws out of violation. Or in authority.
That's a really good reason for the subcommittees.
It really is, yeah, it keeps you from running afoul of that law. So that was our agenda items for next time. Are there any more? No? Okay, well, at this time, I'd like to move for adjournment. What? Oh, that was on, I'm sorry.
We forgot about that.
Was it not on
We
the,
discussed that.
was it not on the agenda? Was the 21 CP, oh, it was the action items from the 21 CP report. Thank you. Yeah, we actually did not go over that, sorry. It wasn't on the
Sorry,
agenda,
Wade.
I totally missed that on the
What's that?
agenda.
Sorry, Wade.
I think we missed that on the agenda item, the questions last time for the 21 CP report that we talked about. I know Jerry had some questions from our last meeting. And said you were gonna get back back with on the,
What happened at the peer support?
Like if y'all have heard back from New Orleans. and
No, I think we
plan-
put that off till the November, as I recall. Because I said it was gonna be longer than a month, cause we were waiting on the,
Starting to get
21
into the
CP.
program, right? Yeah.
21 CP was gonna be coordinating that, EPIC training.
That's right.
So, I don't have an update on that, because I think
I
we're
think you just
still
say
waiting.
a couple months. Yeah. So I think you're still trying to get into the program too, it's very hard to
Yes.
get into it.
Yes, and that, the EPIC is the peer accountability that you're talking about, Sean.
Okay.
The main reason I didn't put that on there, we had discussed that, is because you guys knew ahead of time kind of where we were before even like the city council, knew about it. And it was basically the same thing, we were waiting on epic training, so that's why we didn't put it on there, because we're still where we were.
Yeah, cause that's really the only thing hanging out there at this point.
no, that makes sense, I remember it now, I forgot about that also, so that's no problem.
May I ask a question of our deputy chief? Hey,
I think I heard a second.
so one of the things, Wade, that you mentioned last time that is referenced, in the minutes, and a comment that Jared, made, triggers it for me, which has to do with this internally developed community engagement plan, which I found odd, that a community engagement plan would be developed without the community. I'm wondering if there's anything further that you can share about the status of that and the receptivity to having participation from the community before this is a full-blown agreed upon plan.
The status is it's still in process, quite honestly. I think you've heard, not exactly the same thing, but we've had the, community liaisons or command liaisons, which are lieutenants and above, that the chief has talked about, assigning to, various community groups within the city. So like tonight, Lieutenant Rollins is meeting with the, one group, I can't remember which.
And then with the
and then-
IMA, among others.
Yeah, no, this is a designated community group, like, last night South Slope had a meeting, and one of our captains went, cause he's the liaison to that group. So there's 14 or 15 groups, we just rolled out the individual assignments within the past week. And actually, if we put that on notes, I'll try to bring that next week, or next meeting, as to who those assignments are for specific committees, or communities. I think that'll be good. But that's different than the community engagement
Right.
project, and that's really more of a, kind of a carryover from what we talked about when we were discussing this, and the formation of the HRCA, right?
Yeah.
What groups we're active with, so I think it's kind of that, and how do we continue to go there. So I think, once we kind of get a grasp on what we're looking at as the starting point, then I think we're, reaching out to those communities that we can identify, reaching out to this, which this group should be helping us identify communities and bringing people that we can, interact with or
To develop,
share.
I'm still not hearing. I'm really looking for ways in which there is a willingness on the part of the department to actively engage in the creation plan. Not just then to take it out and to have another list of here are the organizations we've met with, because now we
Right,
have all
no,
these
and that's-
liaison roles. The actual creation of that community engagement plan to reflect, I would not dare to speak, I can barely speak for myself. I mean, I wouldn't speak for anybody else, but it seems to me it's really important through other boards and commissions, but through other community organizations, through community center networks, through the residence council, through whatever, but not to come out with a product before, in fact, there has been actual participation by the community to be engaged.
To conceptualize it, right? You want
Yeah,
the community to help conceptualize.
I'm still not getting, it still sounds to me as if that's not part of the planning process, to actually have the community members in the planning process. Just as Michael said, gee, maybe community members can be on subcommittees of CPAC, can community members be part of the community engagement APD planning process?
I would say that they are, and will be when we get to that point. We're just not, we haven't got to that dance yet. We're still formulating what we're doing internally. But I certainly, when we're looking to how to reach out, who to reach out to, that's going to be from this group, from other groups, making recommendations. Who do we bring to the planning to do the larger engagement plan, right?
As long as, for me, hearing that there is an expectation, there is a mechanism to bring into that planning process members of the community, however defined, group like this can help define, if the HRCA can help define, Gene can, that there's the opportunity to not get this product, and then surprise, surprise, it's not always really responsive to what might work best in one.
I think that is a reasonable expectation, and I think that would be included in the formation of the full engagement plan.
And also, that's something that Jerry was pointed out in your earlier points about the goals of this committee, is making sure that community outreach is involved in everything, and we can have a subcommittee that focuses on that. That's kind of that thing like a, and they will be plugged into this process for the police department. And it can serve as that liaison. That's again going back to our mission statement of the liaison between those two communities and being that bridge connector.
Yeah, I don't expect us, being APD, to roll out this is APD's community engagement plan, community, here it is. That, I don't see that being the end result, so.
Right. So for the agenda item, I also have on there that, the police assignments for each community.
Yes, I
We'll
did.
do that, so I added that for our next agenda item also, for next meeting. Yeah.
But I think that's probably where we'll draw from some of the development ideas for the engagement plan, just by having folks reaching out to the communities already, right? So.
Okay, if there are no more agenda items, I'm going to move for adjournment. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
A motion to adjourn.
Second?